Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to tune in. And today I'm joined by entrepreneur, podcaster, author, public speaker and co-owner of EnTICEing Media, Nell Tice, who is here to discuss her thoughts on content creation, which is literally what we are doing right now. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. EnTICEing Media is a full-service multimedia production company that Nell and her husband Kenny have owned for over 5 years in what started as a side hustle, then became a full-time adventure when Nell decided to leave her corporate COO position at a coffee and tea manufacturer. Nell is also a podcast host, as I mentioned, of What the Nell podcast, which has released over 150 episodes and gained over 100,000 downloads and hit the charts in Canada, Mexico, Australia. I just made up a new country there. Mexico, Australia and the Philippines. As a public speaker, Nell has spoken on the topics such as how to take the leap from 9 to 5 to full-time entrepreneur, how to get out of a situation you hate and into one you love, and AI in business. Nell's book, Curvature of the Career, hit #1 in Women in Business and #1 in 45-minute short reads on Amazon.com. Congratulations on that, becoming a bestseller. And Nell's biggest passion outside of her business is travel, where she and Kenny have been traveling domestically and internationally for the last 10 years or so, which has inspired them to create their Kenny and Nell YouTube channel, which, despite what happened to travel during the pandemic, has grown to over 12,000 subscribers at this present day in early 2025. 12,000, that would get me dizzy. I just checked literally before we started recording and I have 72 subscribers on my YouTube channel, and I'm thinking, I'm viral. Like, I am viral. You
It's
never know.
good.
I love it. So everything that Nell does serves her main purpose and passion in life, which is helping small businesses and business owners share their unique stories through the power of media. And Nell believes that everyone's story is worth sharing and there's an audience just waiting to hear it. I can't wait for this conversation. Nell, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, Gary, thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be creating content with you today.
Exactly. So in supplement to what I just described on your bio there, like, give me an idea of your journey. You're in a COO position for an organization that deals in consumables and some very popular consumables in coffee and tea. So they're not going away anytime soon. And I'm really interested in your journey to getting to that point, and then what sparked the opportunity to say, I don't know that this is my calling. I think this may be something else.
Sure. It's always interesting. I think that in our society today, we are so bred to want to have, especially in America, right? We want to have the perfect family. We want to have the white picket fence and the house and the corporate career that everyone aspires to. We go to college to be able to achieve these things. And there comes a time at some point in your career where you say, you know what, this just isn't enough. And this isn't truly what I want. And I think asking kids at 18 years old to decide what they want to do for the rest of their life is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, if you're not changing along the way somewhere and changing your belief system and feeling different things, then you're not growing as a human being. So I attribute the move that I made to growth. And quite honestly, there were things that I loved about having that position, and there were things that I didn't love so much. And I learned a lot about what not to do in leadership. And I just kept finding myself thinking, I could do this differently. I have other passions in life, and I could use those skills to build something for me. If I am going to go out there and work so hard and do all of this for someone else, why wouldn't I be willing to do it for me? So that was also part of that big step that I took. And I'm a little impulsive. So my husband and I had talked about this possibly being an opportunity down the road for me to leave and finally be able to tap into my creativity and artistry. Now I'm fully willing to admit that is what I am. And it just hadn't been at exactly that time that I made that decision. I walked into work one day and I gave my resignation. I said, "That's it. I'm done." And I came home and I told my husband what I did. And he said, "All right, let's go." And that's what led us to building the business. And when you have an opportunity like that and you've put yourself in that type of position, you don't have a choice
Yeah.
to not make it. You are willing to do whatever it takes. And somehow, over the years, what I learned and what not to do and what to do in leadership, all of that culminated and led me to believing in myself and gaining that confidence to be able to take those steps and actually move beyond taking those steps too.
Yeah, there's so much richness in everything that you said there, and I was smiling from ear to ear when you mentioned about trying to impress upon an 18-year-old. You have to select it and you have to stick with it, and this is very important. My
Right.
son is 15, is shortly to be 16, and he was kind of getting that in his head situation where I'm saying, look, you're in high school now. Before you know it, you're going to be in university, and you're going to have
Mm,
to try and pick something. And he's saying, how am I supposed to pick what I'm doing for the rest of my life? And I said, whoever mentioned that? Whoever mentioned
yeah.
that? I didn't. Your mum didn't. No way did we. Pick
Right.
something that you are interested in, that you think might, broaden some horizons, or open some doors for you,
Sure.
and just do it in chunks of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Give yourself that opportunity to have a good, meaningful educational experience, and then decide what you want to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm old, and I just did a whole pivot. So I'm hoping like these are lessons that he's learning in
Yeah.
terms of, you don't have to have it all figured out at any point in your life as long as you're growing. So I'm so glad actually when you said that it was all literally growth, and maybe that's not how it felt in and of the moment, but shortly afterwards, or maybe it was in the moment. I wasn't there obviously, but that's the experiences that I want Leo, as my son, to be able to grasp and say, nothing lasts forever. I can make choices, and if I make a choice that served me in the moment and doesn't serve me now, I can do something different. And yes, to your point, I don't have any choice. I really need to go for this, but you can still change your mind. And it could be
Yes.
something that you did at some point, and you say, I think I've given as much as I can to this. I've gained as much as I can from it. I'm going to try and use all of this experience that I've gathered over time, and I'm going to try something different, and that's
Yeah.
the beauty of option and opportunity, and the ability to understand the certain core skills and strengths that you would have. It's such a brilliant story. So then, content.
Hmm.
We are consuming. We were actually chatting just before we recorded, and I thought, oh, we better click record here.
Yeah.
But
We
we
were
were
giving away all the value
we really
unrecorded.
were. We were absolutely brilliant before we started, and hopefully it will be the same for this conversation. But I mean, content is something that is literally around us. It's something that sometimes we have choice and whether we consume it, and sometimes we don't, and sometimes it's kind of just imparted to us. What's your relationship with content at large, and
Mhm.
why have you suddenly, not suddenly, why have you decided to focus on the main areas of content that you have for right now?
Sure. That's a really good question. People don't talk enough about the type of content that they consume and or you're not consuming. I've considered myself a techie type person.
Right.
I've stayed pretty up to date on latest technologies and things like that. And I am, involved slightly in AI and, how I use it in my business and things like that. And so it's always been of interest. And content, so first of all, we never referred to content as content until
Yeah.
recently, right? When we were back in the 90s, we were watching TV or we were on instant messenger on the chats and things like that. We didn't call it content. We just were doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it was happening so fast. This all just happened so quickly that we started consuming so much of what was put in front of us. And, with Facebook and social media and MySpace all coming out in the early 2000s, it just was kind of there. And the beautiful part about now is that we have a choice, and we're starting to differentiate what different content and what platforms make the most sense for us and for different audiences. So when it comes to, for instance, for the content that I choose to consume, I like to look at the kind of person that I want to be. If I'm watching personal development type, Gary V type reels in the morning before I get out of bed, because that's my choice, that's my routine, I like to consume a little bit of content before I start my day.
Yeah.
Then I am probably going to lean more towards a mindset of growth and development. And that will help me move on to be the best person I can be every day and in my business and for my relationships and things like that. If I choose to consume content that is violent or proposes hate towards any type of group in this world, I'm likely going to pursue that in my daily life. And I'm going to start feeling really bad about myself. I'm going to start treating people the ways that I shouldn't. And so it all just kind of works that way. So the reason why, to actually answer your question about why I'm choosing the realms of content that I'm currently in, I believe that podcasting is one of the absolute best forms of content that we can consume and we can create for anything that we're doing, because the art of conversation is so lost in today's society and in our world, with our communication styles being what they are, with our heads in our phones all day long. And the art of conversation and human connection is something that's so important that we have to keep going so that we don't actually let the technology and all of that other outside content we don't want to consume us. And that's why I choose to be in the podcast realm. I also love being in the video realm, because to me, video is the next best thing to being in person, which allows us to maintain that human connection again. And I think it's so important for everyone to share their story, even if it helps just one person. Yeah. You've done your job. That's it. And you could be saving a life. We work with, my husband and I are involved in radio, and we have a live radio show. We've had other live radio shows in the past on a different station. And that connection is also so great because there's nothing like live radio. We sort of developed this concept of having a live chat while we were doing our shows, which allows people to connect real time, which is amazing. That's what it's really all about, is connection. And I love what I do. And I love the fact that we have options now to create content. Whereas, back when I wanted to be on the Weather Channel, which is what I went to college for, was meteorology, you had to have a degree to be on TV, to be on the radio, to do all of this. And now we have the beauty of options and platforms that are accessible to everyone, with or without a degree. So you have the opportunity to create this life for yourself. So to me, it's about connection. It's about opportunity. And it's your choice. You can do what you want with it. You can be the person you want to be, the best version of yourself.
Yes, I love it. Thank you for the plug. It's so interesting talking about the art of conversation, where I teach undergraduate classes at the local university here in Calgary. And one of them is establishing a professional online presence, specifically focusing on LinkedIn. And when I say, right, what's your strategy in terms of, assume you have your profile set up, how are you going to use it as they go forward? For the most part, not carte blanche, but for the most part, the students are saying, I'm just going to consume. Basically, I'm paraphrasing what they would say, but their comfort zone is, this is literally what you and I were chatting about before we started recording, that the consumption and maybe the odd occasion they might like something and
Yes.
such. And that's a big step for
Mhm.
them. And my messaging to them during our time together is along the lines of exactly what you said. Like, you have a story to tell. I know that you probably don't think that you do because that's literally what you said to me,
Right.
but I would be interested in your story. Why did you pick this specialism in your degree, and why did you pick the U of C, and why this particular course? You've got a certain element of choice in there. Like, that's all a life journey, and that's all data and information that you could be using to give yourself a better sense of self and understanding of who you are, what you want to do, how that can grow and help you do the contributions you want to do and have the impact that you want to have.
Mhm.
And a lot of them, I'm kind of a little bit sad to say, Nell, they're kind of like, that's okay for you, Gary. That's not really for me. And I'm saying I don't tell lies. I am
Mhm.
genuinely interested in your story. If you pop something up there and you tagged me on that, which is a
Mhm.
better way to make sure I see it,
Right.
I would absolutely engage with it. I would provide you some encouragement, and then you would get that opportunity to have that experience and see that things aren't so onerous. And part of it is get the art of conversation. Part of it is you can be a consumer or a creator.
Mhm.
You could be both, of
Yeah,
course. You
absolutely.
know, but what do you want to be? Do you want to just continue for your entire life to consume other people's content, or do you want at some point to say, I actually don't think I agree with that. I actually think there's something else to do. Here are some observations that I've had over the last little while, and exactly to the last point of your bio,
Mhm.
everyone has a story to tell. And it sounds a bit cliche that if you're helping one person, but it's absolutely true from the heart.
Yeah.
If someone takes one takeaway from this that gives them a positive impact in terms of sense of self or their ability to be able to interact with and add value to others,
Mhm.
I mean, that's a blessing of all blessings, isn't it?
It's a blessing and it's also a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
We talk all the time about, I mean, specifically regarding radio shows and music and how music saves lives.
Yeah.
There are millions of songs and bands and lyrics out there that people have chosen to listen to time and time again that have maybe saved them from stepping off that ledge.
Yeah.
And it's such a responsibility when you're creating content that you have in how you're influencing and manipulating people and
Yeah.
wanting them to buy from you and selling to people is one thing, and spreading the message of hate and things like that is another. And you have a responsibility to help. Yes, you want to be the best version of yourself, but you also want to make others the best version of themselves. And one of the
Exactly.
best ways to do that is to give people opportunities to tell their stories so that
Yeah.
they have that opportunity to then help someone else. Because for some of us, it's not easy. It's not easy to even make a post on
Yeah.
Facebook. It's not easy to put a camera in front of your face. I can't tell you how many people come to me and they say, yeah, I really want to create all this content, but I'm really uncomfortable in front of the camera. I
Yeah.
can't do this. And being able to help people step into that comfortable place where they can get there to share the story, that's also a big key too. But the responsibility of creating content is huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, with your experience across a variety of media, video and audio and the written word, and you're speaking in front of audiences, what's your process for approaching this so that everyone gets the most authentic version of Nell?
That's a really good question. I think that once you realize that the audience is the same but different, that's where you can start to branch out and curate content for specific types of audiences so that they get the message that you are sending.
Right.
So for instance, if I'm speaking on a stage, I've got to look at the elements of what got us all there together. Did they buy a ticket? Was it a free event? Was it something that was offered because they bought something else? What are the elements involved in getting that person there into that chair. They're obviously wanting to learn. They wouldn't be there if they weren't wanting to learn something.
Yeah.
So that's a different type of audience, but it's still an audience that's needing to hear the message. And then if you look at a social media audience, if you think about your different platforms, LinkedIn is obviously a little more business oriented. Business minded people are there. And Instagram is a little more interactive. It's pretty. People want stunning visuals and engagement and fast paced things and music and things like that. Once you realize that each audience is different and you just have to curate your message in a different way. So when I'm speaking to an audience about, let's just take, for instance, how to get out of a 9 to 5 and into something you love.
Yeah.
Or take yourself out of your 9 to 5 and do your own thing, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
I'm gonna speak it in a way to the audience in person differently than I'm going to speak it on Instagram. And on Instagram, I'm gonna create a reel. It's gonna have fun music. It's gonna have all these great B-roll moments and colorful transitions and things like that. Whereas at the audience, I might have a PowerPoint presentation behind me going with slides, opportunities to have people take notes, slow my speech down a little bit, because they're there for a reason. They're in front of me, whereas on social media, people are scrolling constantly too, so they've got to be engaged. So once we can really, truly understand that each audience is the same but different, then I think you're golden.
Yeah, you have that opportunity. I attended a webinar, seminar, something recently where the person, in quite a condescending way, said, "Oh, these people are the worst." When you go to 3 or 4 of their different profiles and it's the exact same content, and I think the reason I took a little bit of a umbrage to it was I do that. Like I literally post the same video to different platforms each day.
Oh, I do it too.
You
I'm
know,
totally guilty of that.
and I think it was in some way meant to embrace the audience, and I was kind of like, I don't make the time. I was going to say I don't have to. I don't make the time to spend any more time on my social media presence than I do already,
Yeah.
because I have not no desire. I have no expectation that my social media presence is going to exponentially generate revenue. But what I want to do is I want to add value to people. And at some point you might come across their thought process if they are looking for someone to come and do a talk, to have a conversation with about coaching or, podcast guesting or something like that, to say, right, well, that part of it's working, but it's not my core business,
Yes.
and I know for some people that it is so that, I mean, that really speaks to the audience is the same but different. And as long as you can have something that's somewhat agnostic between platforms, you're still in relatively good shape.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. I think I totally hear you. It's, as especially business owners, if you're wearing so many hats and you're doing so many different things, sometimes it's month by month and week by week, day by day. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Okay, great. I've got this cool reel. I'm just going to post it everywhere just to get it out there. And sometimes, depending on who you talk to, that hurts your strategy and your algorithms and things like that. But I think that being consistent and getting the message out there is probably the most important thing for sure.
Yeah.
But if you are, I'm going to say, a product-based business, let's say you have a shop or an Etsy store or a boutique, something like that, I think that social media can be a really strong partner in your business. And I think, live shopping on TikTok, don't quote me on this, but I feel like that's going to be the thing in the future. Right. I mean, the days of QVC and HSN and all of that, those are not behind us because the concept is still there, but I think that's all going to shift to social media. I think it's really important for product owners to be there, or boutique owners, I should say. Yeah. For those of us in a service-based industry, I would say social media. So I have a really great partner in what we have a workshop called the Content Strategy Workshop. And the she's always saying social media should be like the gravy on your mashed potatoes. You know, the mashed potatoes are like the main star of the meal, right? That's like
Yeah.
your email newsletters, that's your videos, that's your website, that's the things that you own.
Yeah.
Those are your mashed potatoes. The gravy on top is your social media. And that's where, yes, you can add value to people. You can get in front of people to help them think of you when they're looking for somebody like you that they need.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, and that's the thing too, you need to understand the strategy behind what you're doing and who you are and what platforms are best suited for you too.
Yeah. And how best do you do that? I know you mentioned the algorithms earlier. One of the challenges I have, and I think it's probably an easy challenge for me to have in terms of my social media reach is not vast.
Mm,
So if I'm looking at my numbers, I'm not really overly influenced by them. Some
yeah.
posts do better than others, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting one. And others, I'm thinking, I thought that was great, and other people just haven't happened upon it at some point. So, but I'm influenced neither way
Hmm.
when I see the
Sure.
numbers. But I could imagine other people are when they say, right, these are my values, this is my commitment to myself, this is my strategy, and then all of a sudden some outlier thing works,
Hmm.
and they go, I'm going to change and shift everything because that was the thing that worked. And I would, I don't know how I feel about that, because I can, in
I
one way,
know.
I understand the opportunistic part of it, and in the other way, I'm thinking of, is that enough information to make a pivot like that?
Oh, I so hear you on this. It's so challenging. One of the most common questions that I hear from people that want to be clients, how do I go viral on
Mm,
social media?
yeah, yeah,
And I have to put the coaching hat on and I have to say, please don't make that your goal.
yeah,
Please don't make it your goal because it's going to give you unrealistic data because it is unrealistic to think that you are going to go viral every single time.
yeah.
If you happen to, for instance, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I have a TikTok. I barely ever use it, probably should be. But I would consistently get maybe 700 to 1,000 views on a video, which I guess at the time was pretty decent. But I didn't, it's just a personal account. I didn't really have an agenda with it, so I would just use it when I wanted to.
Yeah.
My husband was doing laundry, and he sometimes, we like to make some of our own, detergents and things like that around our house. So he found a recipe for something that got stains out of clothing really, really well. And he was kind of like doing it in the sink, and I was filming it and I put it on TikTok because it was working. You could see it working.
Yeah.
That video got over 250,000 views.
Oh, wow.
And but here's the thing. You have to resist the urge to shift your entire perspective in business off of that one video.
Yeah.
Sure, I could have just gone all in and said, okay, my personal account is now a laundry account. I am just going to film myself doing laundry every single time, post recipes, things like that. Could I have done that and been successful? Maybe in a past life, but that's really, really risky. I would encourage you to take data that you've collected over time when
Yeah.
you've been consistent, because consistency is going to win every single time.
Yeah.
Virality is not. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, I love the concept of consistency, and that's certainly in a lot of the areas that I subscribe to and the circles that I navigate in. You know, the messaging coming back is, even when you think no one is watching, people are watching.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
so if there's a specific, say for example, you forget to post on a given day, or there's some sort of technical challenge or something,
Mhm.
and then you get that voice from someone you haven't heard from for 5 years saying, hey, what happened to the video today? And you're like, hey,
Yeah.
how you doing? Like, oh, what do you mean it wasn't posted? And then all of a sudden you go look and you see a failure message or something. You think, oh, right, okay, I'll get that. Thanks very much for letting me know. But I didn't realize you were watching. Oh yeah, I watch every single one of your videos. it's things like that. And that, again, talking about what we were talking about before we started recording,
Yeah.
was the ability to know that you're being seen, and to know
Yes.
that what you're doing is actually resonating, and people aren't just kind of going, it's the same old, same old. We've seen this detergent before. Your $250,000 goes down to 64 or something like that, because
By the way, people have very strong feelings about laundry detergents, just saying.
really, it's so bizarre. I did a video, one of the podcast videos, fairly recently, and it was one of my most liked. And the number was lovely to look at. I'm thinking, that's incredible. And then the comments came, and one of the comments, if anyone feels like it, go back and look at my video podcasts and see. And one of the comments was, the host appears to be brain dead.
Oh my God.
Like someone went to themselves, you know what? You know what's the best idea here? I'm going to go and I'm going to click comment, and they click like as well. And then I'm going to insult this guy who gave me this content that I liked because he looks brain dead. And I'm thinking, how would that even... So I just replied saying, say more about that, please. I'm not going to get involved in a
Right.
slugfest or anything like that. I'm not
Sure.
interested in that. And never heard from the person again. But just, that's when social becomes antisocial. And that's what
Yeah.
really turns me off with the whole concept of it, I have to
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
I get that. It's, I laugh about it because I've gotten to a point where I can laugh about it. And it's
Yeah.
the thing is, it's not funny. And
Yeah.
that's the thing about content. When you start putting yourself out there with content, you open yourself up to situations like that. I've had quite a few people, especially on our YouTube channel, because that's where our largest following is. And that's the other things, your authenticity and the content that you create, just does better on different platforms.
Yeah.
And YouTube is that place for us. And we've had comments where people have called us stupid, have called us, somebody, I think actually on my podcast, somebody said, I don't know why I'm watching this right now. This is ridiculous. And keyboard warriors, that's what they are. They're trolls, and their complete objective is to go out there and try to make someone feel bad about themselves. And the thing is that it doesn't really get, I don't want to say easier, you just get a little more numb to it as time goes on. And eventually you can get to the point where you can laugh about it because you understand what's going on here, but also understand too that a lot of these accounts that are doing that are actually fake accounts and not real people.
Yeah.
So when you start to understand some of the nuances about what really goes on behind the scenes, it can help you feel a little less like you're being personally attacked.
Yeah.
And I think that's really key to it as well, is understanding those little nuances behind it.
Definitely. And as you say, you have to learn. You have to learn. You probably have to go through that cycle or that evolution where
Sure
the
do.
first time it stings. Because one thing I say to all my clients and certainly every student I have, it's not about you. And they're kind of like, did you just hear what I said? I told you that he did that, she said that, this is what happened as a result of that to me. I get it. I understand the process. It's still not about you. Even if someone comes and does something absolutely in your face to completely discredit you or in some way inconvenience you, it's about them. It's not about you. You just happen to be the unfortunate who's in that position at that particular time. And that's certainly, I learned that mostly through my coaching training a number of years back. And it was one of the more freeing things that's ever happened, So I've always taken the comedy route, even when I used to get literal written feedback from my classes in university back in the day, and people, that someone would take the time. One person said, I like to have a laugh in the class, and one person said one day, if I wanted a comedy show, I would have gone to Yuck Yucks, and Yuck Yucks is a local comedy club. And I read, and the university was kind of like, oh, here's a bit of negative feedback. Sorry about that. They're usually always good, but you're never going to please everyone. And so then I'm kind of like, wait a second till I read that, and I just burst out laughing. You know, I thought someone took the time to say, I am going to give you exactly what you deserve, Gary. And it's the closest thing to someone coming up and saying to your face, if I wanted a comedy show, I would have gone to your gigs.
Right.
And then, sorry about that, but everyone else seemed to enjoy it. It's my style, it's what you get when you sign up for a class. You don't really know what you're going to get. But
Sure,
hopefully,
sure. Yeah.
hopefully we covered the curriculum and you got what you needed. So I guess the main lesson there is content creation and modality and platform selection and the actual content delivery and how it's absorbed. There's only so much control that you can have. So then back to the authenticity question or the authenticity subject we were talking about earlier, you just have to say, this is me. This is my life. This is me and my husband. This is us traveling. I was watching your tour of Canada and your Tim Hortons and such like that, and some of the facial expressions when you were tasting some of the Tim Hortons food. I'm kind of like, yeah, I've been there before. I understand what it is. But I think you're absolutely right. You put your authentic self out there. You prepare for what's coming back, but
Right.
everything is coming from a heart-centered space and place to be able to add entertainment to other people.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's all about. And people people are smart. They really are. They see right through when you're not being who you are and being authentic. I know authentic is such a buzzword, but
Yeah,
it's so true. When you're not yourself, people know it.
exactly.
And I absolutely love one of my favorite things, and this I try to practice this in all of my relationships, is it's kind of like when you're, in your 20s, you're a girl, you're going out with your girlfriends and you're going to go have a good time and everybody's getting ready and putting the makeup on and everything like that. And you go in front of your friend and you say, does this look good? Should I be wearing this out? And your friend is either going to say, oh my gosh, yeah, you look great. Or they have an opportunity to say, you know what? I think something else would look better for you tonight.
Yeah,
I want to be that friend. And I want those friends in my life that are going to be
yeah,
honest with me and tell me, you know what? I think there's a better suited option for you.
yeah,
And we so often get offended by what we don't want to hear.
yeah,
And that's the unfortunate part. Honesty and authenticity is just people see right through when you're not being honest and authentic. And I would much rather deal with the repercussions of being myself and having someone have an opinion about that and saying that to me than have to retract something that I said because
yeah,
it wasn't real.
yeah,
And, it's, you got to be unapologetic about who you are and what you put out there if you're being real about it, because that is who you are. It's God, the universe, creator, anything, whatever the higher power it is that you believe in, that's how you've been created.
yeah,
And why would you apologize for something that you have no control over?
yeah,
Certainly, we can change certain things about ourselves and perspectives and mindsets and things like that. But at the core, we are who we are.
yeah,
And to apologize for that is just not, that's not realistic.
yeah. Or to diminish your glow, or to
Yeah.
in some way minimize yourself, to say this seems to be the path of least resistance, and if that's going to be a thing, that's going to be a thing. I think you're so right. And in terms of being that friend, in my head and through my teachings as well, I say this conversation is going to happen at some point.
Mhm.
When do you want it to happen? Do you want it to happen as early as possible, or do you want it to happen afterwards? And if it happens afterwards, typically you're picking through the debris, you're dealing with the carnage, and it's much more heavy in every facet of the word heavy,
Totally
where
agree.
you go, well, I didn't think you looked good in that outfit. I didn't think it was appropriate for the place that we were going. So you get what you get. Now you tell me,
Yeah.
well, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. Well, look at me now. What do you think now? So if I have that service mindset, like service as soon as possible mindset to say, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to give you an honest opinion. I'm not going to be insulting about it. I'm not going to
Mhm.
say anything. It might be tinged with a bit of humor, maybe just to kind of soften the blow a wee bit. But if
Sure.
if you're asking, then you're going to get the answer. And
Yeah.
if it's not the answer you want, it's most likely the answer you need.
Oh, so true. So true. Yeah, I completely agree. 100%. The more honest and real and authentic we can be up front, the better off we are.
Definitely, definitely. So when someone engages with enticing media and says, I want to, I will stay away from the go viral, but they come and they say, I have a plan of I want to up the ante on my social media presence. I want to do some colorful things. I have some examples of things that I like to work. How does that process work with you folks where you get the opportunity to sit down and co-create? I'm assuming it's slightly different for everyone, but what are the foundational parts of the process?
Sure. So the foundational parts of the process are, depending on what we're doing, if we're setting up, let's say, video production for you, because profile videos for businesses is something that we do quite a bit of.
Yeah.
There's frameworks and there's outlines and things like that for video. We like to storyboard things, and obviously we're going to bring in your opinions, your visions, and your thoughts about what you want your audience to see. However, there are outlines and frameworks that work for just filmmaking and videos in general that appeal to mass audiences. And so we'll certainly work with you on that. We need to know, what is your brand voice? Who are you? What do you like to consume? What is the audience that you're targeting? And all of those aspects come into play. And same type of thing with the YouTube channel. We do a lot of YouTube channel management, and we've put ourselves in a position where we've worked with YouTube long enough now. We kind of realize what works and what doesn't, and obviously everything will be different for everyone, and all of the clients that we work with have a very specially personalized, curated experience. So the way that all of that works is very personal to the brand itself and what the message is and the story and the audience.
Yeah.
But there are certainly outlines and frameworks that we need to go through depending on the project that work for everyone, because that's, I mean, a film or a video without a storyboard is just kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks. So there has to be a little bit of strategy behind it. Now, I will fully acknowledge we are not social media specialists. So we will help you create the content. As far as, managing data and metrics and analyzing all of that on that end of things, we don't do that. Now, that all being said, it's really fun and enjoyable, and being able to work with so many different people, anybody from financial advisors to real estate agents to other YouTubers. We have a client that is, he teaches entomology to kids and goes into and does school programs and things like that. I just love getting to work with different people, and the experience that you get when you work with EnTICEing Media is obviously on a very personalized level, but ultimately everybody that we work with becomes part of a family.
Yeah.
And that's how we treat you. That's how we're being treated. And we just absolutely love the family that we've created. You're not getting out anytime soon without being part of the family, so just know that. And in this day and age of media and AI and all of these automations and things like that, I love that for behind the scenes. But I have one saying, is that AI should never be your final product. And I feel as though that should be the case in your communications with your clients too. So that's the difference that you're getting with us. You're not just a number. I'm texting you. It's always going to be me. I'm the executive producer. And that's just that personalization, that connection, that human touch. That's what it's all about. And we really strongly believe that. So if you don't want the human touch and connection and the relationship building, then you're probably not right for us.
Yeah, amazing. I was actually just thinking before you said the very last sentence there, who wouldn't want that type and style of experience? There probably are organizations or individuals out there that say,
Sure.
a little bit too touchy-feely, just tell me the 5 steps I need to do and help me with them and move forward. But that certainly doesn't seem like it's your niche
No,
market.
no, we love working with people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, as you know, this is the Best You podcast, and I like to ask every single guest, what is one regular practice that you employ to give Nell the best version of being Nell?
Mm, that's a really good question. And I will tell you that sometimes that changes, especially throughout the year. But I fully believe if the sun is shining, even if it's not shining, if it's cloudy, get outside into nature, go for a walk.
Yeah,
And I truly believe that just getting some fresh air is so healthy and invigorating and get away from the screen and gives you a chance for silence
yeah,
and listening. And I think that that is so important because it provides clarity. It provides clarity for your lungs, your body, your mind. And that's just so important because you can't constantly be doing and consuming and all of the things. We're not built to just be Energizer bunnies
yeah,
until we go to bed at night
yeah,
and not stop. You have to take in some of what has been provided
yeah.
for us. I don't believe, I have a friend, co-host also on my podcast in a series that I do called The Ecopreneur's Edge, and his name is Mikey, and he spells it with 2 E's because the 2 E's stand for environment and everyone. And those are the two things he's passionate about. But without the environment, we don't have everyone.
Yeah.
So the environment that we are in is so important. Get outside, take in some nature, breathe in that fresh air. And I really think that's a huge part of being your best self is, and gaining that clarity.
Incredible. Incredible. Nell, before I let you go, where can people find out more about you and EnTICEing Media and all of the great work you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I love being here and talking about this and encouraging people to share their stories as well. And the best way that you can reach me and us and our business is through our website. It's EnTICEing Media. It's EnTICE media.com. That's a play on my last name, which is Tice. So enticingmedia.com is where you can find everything that we do. You can contact us there and you can watch our YouTube videos, hear more about the radio show, and find out more about the podcast. Everything is there and centralized for you.
Fabulous. Nell, I knew I was going to enjoy this one. It's been an absolute blast. Thank you very, very much for coming on the show today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time being here with you.